The Retro Buzz starts right after this.
You know, for me, I absolutely adored working at Commodore. It was my DNA. I couldn't wait to get into work every day. My team was fantastic, and we loved every second of every day. It was just amazing. It was horrific. When you're seeing people coming around like scavengers bidding for things, I'll give you £5 for that table and £2 for this and all of that. It was horrible, really. But more than that, it's like, because it was the end of an era, and for me personally, I mean, it has been such a huge part of my DNA for 12.5 years. It's really, I'm guessing, although thankfully I've never had the feeling, but I'm guessing it must have been like losing a child.
They were probably the largest or second largest PC manufacturer in Europe, and they bought out the Silica stores in the UK. I think they bought 100 odd stores. And Rumbelows, yeah. Well, they produced this thing called the Walker, Yeah, it looked like a cross between a vacuum cleaner, Darth Vader's helmet, and K9 Doctor Who's metal dog.
We went to see Manfred Schmidt, who was the founder and managing director of ESCOM, and we suggested that it might be a worthwhile thing for him to consider buying Commodore UK as a going concern. And I think this is probably indicative of them as a company. He tried to blackmail Colin and I, and he said that I will buy Commodore UK, but only if you and Colin work for me. And frankly, we didn't want to work for him. And then he said, well, in that case, then he said, you'll have to go back and tell all your employees that they're out of a job because you turned me down. There is a massive need for in our community is to find out what has happened since ESCOM bought the assets from Commodore in the auction in New York, which I was actually at. What happened, how ESCOM basically screwed things up.
I would say people had real, genuine plans to rebuild the Amiga platform, and some were definitely hoaxes, but the vast majority of people spent a lot of time, money, and effort trying to recreate the Amiga dream. And I always, when I say Amiga dream, it always sounds a bit strange, but it really was. If you're an Amigan today, dating back to the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was a fantastic time for computing.
In my opinion, it's the most significant technology I've seen since Commodore.
The story that Dave and I are going to tell, will tell about the post-Commodore. Yeah, all right, there's lots of lows, but there are many highs. But actually, how it actually survived and continues to today in all its various, and I say wonderful forms. And let's celebrate the wonderful forms.
It was a mess. It was definitely court cases and what have you. But through all of that, we've come up with some incredible developments. So I've called the book From Vultures to Vampires, 25 years of copyright chaos and technological triumph.
Hey guys, it's Friday, so you know what time it is. It's time for the Retro Buzz, and we've got a great show for you today. But before we get to our special guest, let's introduce the panel. We've got with us Mr. Hairboy today, Douglas Smith, Mr. Cool Toy.
Yeah, sans hat today. Thanks for having me on, regardless.
Yeah, it's always good to have you. And then we've got the Talk Box, Mr. Glen Planamento from youtube.com/gplanamento. But you're not saying nothing.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Put my little accent on there. Hello. Good day.
That's pitiful.
I don't know what region that is, but
Crikey! Are you laughing at me?
You better put that modulator back on. You'll do better with that one.
I think I have it here over somewhere. Let's see if I save this at all. I'll put on my Amiga voice. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Long live Amiga.
Now that he's got that out of his system. So who do we got?
I had to get out of my system a little bit. Another very good episode here. We had some Amiga talk last week, but we have even more so this week with someone who really has a fairly good history of the machine itself. David Pleasance is in the house, and he was the former, the last CEO or president of Commodore UK. And an extreme thank you for joining us today, David.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, we have so many things to talk about, and I'm going to, again, probably dominate the talk from my two co-hosts here. But just so people who don't know you, can you give a little rundown of how you started with Commodore?
Yes, indeed. I actually joined Commodore in June of 1983, Commodore UK. I joined as a salesman. Within three years, I'd become sales and marketing director at the UK office. I then had an opportunity to apply for general managership within Commodore, which was at CEL, Commodore Electronics Limited, which was in fact the holding company for the group. And that was based in Basel in Switzerland, where I looked after 35 countries. That's all of the countries where Commodore did not have an operating subsidiary. I was there for 2 years, and then I went to the United States to work for Commodore Inc. in the Westchester building. Commodore Inc. was a sales company for Commodore in America, and I was the vice president there of consumer products. I was there for about a year, and then I was brought back to the UK and was actually forced into becoming the MD at the UK because Commodore was in very big trouble, and they knew that I had built the UK business more or less, so they forced me to go back and try and help them to get out of trouble. So 12 and a half years altogether, but in varied positions around the world, which I have to be honest with you was really the best days of my life. Incredible.
I definitely can understand that. I used to work for a company called Prodigy, who was a pre-web service, if you will, and that was probably one of the best places, aside from my current job. In case my bosses are watching, I love my current job. But outside of that, Prodigy was my other good job. Now, we're obviously going to talk about our lovely lady here, but we were talking a couple things before the show started about like the Commodore 64. And you had mentioned that something about, how many were actually sold. And I had always heard about 21 million Commodore 64s have been sold, but you kind of hinted at that maybe that number was not correct.
No, it's not correct. The only reason I know for certain the number is that some of your audience may know that as MD of the UK company, when Commodore went bankrupt, we tried to launch a management buyout. In fact, we got very close to it. And as such, we registered with the liquidator. And so we had an opportunity to do our due diligence. And therefore, we went and we had to look at all the books. The actual number of 64 sold worldwide is just under 27 million.
Ooh,
oh, wow. So it's a little higher.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just under 27 million. That's the actual real number.
Very impressive.
Now, obviously, you were at the company pre-Amiga. So you were there when you appropriated this under the nose of Atari. Can you tell us a little bit about Commodore's perspective when the Amiga Corporation was kind of in I think it was a $500,000 30-day deal with Atari to keep them afloat, and you guys kind of came in the last minute, offered a deal they couldn't refuse, and want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. It's kind of a sad story because probably most people know that the person who founded Commodore and built it up was Jack Tramiel. And now I joined the company in June of '83. In January of '84, I went to the Winter CES in Vegas. I wasn't supposed to be there officially because it was the US and I was based in Europe. But I wanted to have a look around and so on and so forth. And Jack Tramiel was actually on the stand there, and he was his usual aggressive self shouting at everybody. So I shook hands with him, but that's the only time I ever got to meet him, because a couple of months later he had fallen out with Irving Gould and had moved on. And of course, what he did then, he'd heard about the Amiga product, which was what was it called? Toro El Toro or something. Anyway, he heard about it. So what he did was he went and did that deal with them. He knew that they were in serious financial trouble. He lent them $500,000 and said it's got to be paid back within, it was something like 60 days. Otherwise,
Right.
I'll own the company, something like that. Anyway, so the moment he'd given them his check, he went off and he bought Atari for the princely sum of $1, because of course Atari was in huge debts. And I don't know if many of you know, but often if you buy a company that's bankrupt, you're supposed to pay off all the debts, but you never do. You just never do. You just bypass it. So he got Atari for $1, and his plan was, of course, to have the Amiga product and sell it as an Atari product, which would have been his way right back into the business from having lost his position with Commodore. The reason, of course, he lost his position was that he needed financing to grow the business, and Irving Gould came along with lots of money, and eventually it turned out that Irving Gould had 22% shares, Jack had 6%. So he really wasn't in a very strong position.
You lost control.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, what happened was that Commodore heard about the Amiga product within the 60 days, went over to meet up with them, and said, "Well, that's a terrible deal that you've got there." Offered them a much better deal, and did the deal, signed up the deal. Um, Jack Tramiel found out and went absolutely ballistic. He went over to the Amiga guy and said, "I'm going to sue your asses." And they said, "You can't do that." And they handed him his check back. They'd never
That was
cashed
the
the check.
deal. They paid it back, and it was
Yeah,
paid back literally at the 11th hour. Correct? They were literally down
yeah,
to the wire when they paid it.
yeah. And as I understand it, that check is actually framed on the wall. I think it's in Leonard Tramiel's home office. It's actually, the check is, it's framed. It's just quite a famous check, really.
So it was really at that point that really the huge battle between Atari and Commodore to outdo one another really speared up. They were two companies that, they were a little more civil. But I guess after that, with the Atari ST coming out and the Amiga, the two companies were really going after each other's throats at that point, right?
Well, not straight away, because you've got to remember the first product launched from Amiga was the 1000, which was in no man's land. It wasn't half of a business product, and it wasn't a low enough spec, a low enough price to be a games product. So it really was in kind of no man's land. In the meantime, Jack had launched the ST, which definitely hit the market that the Amiga was originally designed for. So they got a big head start on us. And of course, the other thing that they did, which was very smart, they put a MIDI port in the ST, and that opened itself up to the whole home music market, which is very big and still is. So it took a long, long time before we eventually reached the 500, that we had a product that we could compete with. And that's when I come into action. I love that. I absolutely love that. And there's another reason for that, you see, because the first person, well, let me correct that. When I first joined Commodore, I was employed Commodore Pets.
Uh-oh.
It's okay, we're back again.
Yeah.
Commodore Pets in the retail market. I did that for 3 months, and then they got in touch with me and said, "Look, our 64 has been released for the last 4 or 5 months. It's going crazy. We need somebody. We need a really experienced retail expert to head up the 64 sales." So I went to do that job. Now, the guy who was in charge of the consumer division at that time was a guy called Paul Welsh. He was very close friends with one of Tramiel's very close allies. Cut a long story short, Paul got fired from Commodore, and he joined Atari. And Paul never liked me, and the reason he never liked me is because I was given to him. He didn't pick me. It's a very long story. I won't go into the details of it, but the bottom line is that he didn't like me at all. So when he's suddenly out there selling the ST, and then I'm out suddenly selling the 500. I took him on personally. And I absolutely outsold them, outmarketed them in every way possible, with lots of trick marketing things. Which
well, you were very good with the marketing, which is something that Commodore US really was not good at. Do you want to talk a little bit about? Stephen was talking again before the show. He may be able to get a Sega CD at a really good price. I'm not going to mention Stephen, so you don't get outbid on that. But there was a time where Commodore was bold enough to actually put a huge billboard outside of Sega UK, taunting them with their CD32 versus the Sega CD. You want to tell us about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's again, in a way, it's a sad story, because in all the years I was with Commodore, the CD32 was the first and only product that had ever been planned properly, from its design to its marketing. The whole thing had been planned properly, and it was a beautiful plan. But because Commodore got into financial difficulties, Mehdi Ali came to me and he said, "I want you to launch the CD32 before Christmas," when it was planned to launch at the late spring, early summer. And I said, "Mehdi, you're crazy." He said, "No, we need the extra sales." I said, "Look, there's two things. First of all, you're not going to get extra sales. I said, I've got orders for every 1,200 we're making up until Christmas. They're already ordered and sold. if you bring the CD32, anybody who was thinking of buying a 1200 is not going to buy it. And we're going to have a major problem on our hands with all the retailers full of stock that they can't sell. So the second reason you shouldn't do it is that I put development kits into every single one of the major software houses for the CD32 under NDA, and they were all developing a software specifically to utilize all the features that the CD32 had over and above the 1200. But he absolutely insisted it's got to be done, got to be done, got to be done. So anyway, you have to take on the role. So we did a fantastic launch. We hired the Science Museum in London to do the launch, and it was phenomenal. It really, really was really great launch. But just before we launched, there was an article in a PC magazine, and it was what's this guy's name? The guy he was the president of what's his name? Kowalski, the president of Sega. He was interviewed, and somebody in the interview said to him, "What about 32-bit CD-based consoles?" And he said, "Can't be done. If anybody could do it, it would be Sega. It can't be done." Now, but 3 weeks later, of course, we actually launched ours, and it was going to be in the shops 2 weeks after that. But on top of that, so actually, what we did, we read that article out at the launch. We read the article out with somebody with a great speaking voice who read the whole article out, and then we said, "Ladies and gentlemen, here," and then we opened the smoke and mirrors, and there's the CD32, right, which is fantastic. But about a week or two later, a guy rang me up and he said, "David," he said, "you probably don't remember me." He said, "We've done some business before." He said, "You've taken some poster sites with us in the past," and he said, "And I've got to be honest with you," he said, "I've got a fantastic deal for you." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I've got 3 of the top poster sites in London." He said, "You know how we work. You pay 50% deposit when you book it, and you pay the other 50% on the week that it goes live." And he said, "I've had somebody who paid me 50% for these 3 sites, and they've now cancelled. And I'm happy to tell you that you can have these 3 for the 50% that they owe us." And this was obviously just before Christmas.
Yeah, half off.
It was a cracking deal. And he said, "Well, by the way, one of them is right outside Sega's head office." Well, that was too good to be true. See, Sega's advertising in the UK used to be this good takes ages. To be this good takes Sega. So we turned around and we put a big sign up and said, "To be this good will take Sega ages," because they'd said so. and they couldn't argue. They couldn't argue because their president had actually quoted it in a magazine. So I said, there is a God sometimes.
That's awesome.
And of course, that was before we ever had internet or anything. But that went global. Everybody was raving about that, and it was fun. And I must also tell you that the guy in charge of Sega UK is a guy called Nick Alexander, the MD. He, was really great because in the daytime we'd be competitors. At night time we'd have a beer at the bar together. And just after that went live, we had our annual dinner. We always had a big dinner at Christmas time, raising money for charity and stuff like that, and giving awards out. And of course, Nick was there with a lot of his people. I was there with a lot of mine. And he walked up to my table and he just looked at me and he said, "A bit close to home, Mr. Pleasance, a bit close to home." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, where needs must, Nick, where needs must." And never another word was said, but they were seething. They were so angry. Yeah.
Now, being with all the stuff that was gone on Commodore, there was a lot of engineers, there's a lot of new tech being worked on. How did you feel about how the PC and Macintosh started creeping on the Amiga's graphical and sound capabilities, where the Amiga still was they finally released the AGA chipset, but it was kind of a little too late, but it wasn't like the AAA chipset that was being talked about. What kind of happened there? Why was Commodore not behind the hardware part as much as they probably should have been?
Well, there's 2 solid reasons why Commodore went bankrupt. And I'll be honest with you, I knew within a few weeks of joining them in '83 that they would fail one way or another. There's 2 reasons. Is that one, they never, ever, ever had any kind of a business plan. Never. They never used to do market research and say, "What do you need? What are you looking for? What can we make you?" what does the market want? Can we compete with the price point? They never did any research like that. Us people at the front line who knew what was needed. What would happen is that I'd suddenly get 10,000 plus fours land in my warehouse. I mean, it's like letting the virus into your warehouse. Who the hell ordered plus fours? I mean, there was much use as a chocolate fire guard. Really, they were completely useless, right? So that's one reason why Commodore was always bound to fail. No business plan. The second reason is they never ever had any kind of external auditing. So they never knew if somebody in one of their subsidiaries, a general manager or a managing director, whatever the position was actually telling them the truth or not. Now, I know for an absolute fact, for example, and I'll talk about this guy, he's dead now, so I don't mind, but I'll talk about him anyway. Our general manager of Commodore Netherlands was a guy called Bernard Van Tienen, who actually pops up in ESCOM later. He used to brag to all us general managers whenever we were together that every quarter's end, without fail, he was under target. So he would write false invoices. He would load product onto a lorry and send it on a journey for 5 days. So it went out of the warehouse at the end of the quarter, records the sales, gets his commission, and gets his bonus. 5 days later, it comes back in again.
Wow.
Now, if you imagine all the people that were doing things like that around the world because they were never audited, and that was 100% genuine, I can promise you. And in fact, he was sued by the Dutch liquidators, and all of that is in my first book. I got in touch with a Dutch newspaper that printed a whole article about how he was being sued, and they gave me permission to not only to print it but to also to translate it into English, and that all formed part of my book. It was all true. There were so many people doing that, and so getting back to the story that you asked me the question about, which I've forgotten what it was. Oh, I know, it was about technology. What it was is that at the same time as this is going on, Mehdi Ali comes in, and he is the worst person in the world at recruiting people. He had terrible skills. For example, he recruited just before I went to Commodore US in Westchester, when I was there in January of '92. Just before I arrived, he'd recruited, I think it was in November, a guy who was head of engineering. The guy's name is Bill Sidness. His fame was that he was responsible for the famous IBM Junior, which is considered the biggest failure in corporate history, right?
Yeah.
Now get this. You'll love this, right? My first day in Westchester, which I think was about the 7th or 8th of January, straight after the CES, the first thing I did was to go in and see the engineers. Because I know without engineers, we don't have a business, right? So I went in to see all the engineers. And guess what? There were seven Amiga engineers. And get this, there were 40 PC engineers that had all just been recruited by Bill Sidness because they were mates of his from IBM, and he gave them a job. Now, who in their right minds in 1992 would even consider designing your own PCs when they're coming out of the Far East at ridiculously low prices? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So in order to pay for that, Sidness cuts all the Amiga engineering, and he'd come along and he'd say, "What are you working on?" "I'm working on this AAA. We don't need that. Stop it. Do this." And they just stopped them. There were so many things that were half designed and half built that got canned and got canned and got canned, and it was starving the R&D and the engineering on the Amiga side of things. That's what caused the problem.
That's heartbreaking, because I know that the AAA chipset was pretty far along, and then they simply had basically, and the 16-bit audio and all these things were pretty much underway. And like I said, it got stopped. Now I know why. And then we got the AGA, which was a stopgap. I mean, it was something, but it was just not enough to be where the Amiga was about 7-8 years ahead of the PC and Mac platform. That 7 years got depleted, and it never kind of recovered from that.
Absolutely true.
So let's take a little bit more further down, because we do want to talk about a couple of things before we run out of time, and I could talk forever. So unfortunately, Commodore did go bankrupt. At least Commodore UK did. I'm sorry, Commodore US did, not Commodore. Commodore UK was doing fairly well.
Yes.
So when Commodore UK was, I can do it again. When Commodore US, that's how close we are. Commodore US kind of went belly up. You were trying to salvage the company. You were trying to salvage the Amiga. You were trying to salvage the product line, and you guys were doing it, but something happened. You want to go into a little bit what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is that you know, sometimes when you end up working with alongside somebody, when I was, as I think I mentioned that I was forced back to the UK as MD. I didn't really want to do that. Just to fill that in, there are two kinds of salespeople in the world. There are hunters and there are farmers. I'm a hunter. I love to get out and get new business, and that's what I do. I'm not a farmer. So I was offered the job of MD in the UK a long time earlier, but I turned it down because I'd built that business and I knew how solid it was. I wanted more exciting adventures. Anyway, eventually I was forced back to do that job because, you know, as Mediali said to me, he said, I've known all along that you're the person who built the business. We need solid business more than ever now, so I'm making you in charge. And I said, okay, well, you need to know something. I said, yes, I can read a balance sheet, but I'm a sales and marketing expert. I'm good at what I do, but you don't want me to handle the finances because that would take away from my ability to sell and market and get more revenue. So we'd already got a financial guy in there, Colin Proudfoot, and I said, let Colin and I share the MD-ship so I can concentrate on what I do best and he can do what he does best. And we just really got on incredibly well. I didn't even know him before, but it was just one of those things that you meet somebody, you know, this really is good. Anyway, when the time came and eventually Commodore declared bankruptcy, Colin and I looked at each other and we said, you know, we can salvage something out of this. Then we sat down and we did a business plan. We worked with a company called Coopers and Lybrand, who are famous for helping management buyouts up to very high level. And we sat down and we wrote a business plan that was so comprehensive. And the truth of the matter is that from that business plan, with Coopers and Lybrand's help, Colin and I raised $50 million. Now, this is 94.5. You try and raise $50 million today, right? It's almost impossible. And the reason was that we had a fantastic business plan, exactly what we were going to do, how we could utilize and make revenue from the brand names and stuff like that. Now, our $50 million was made up of several factions. There were 2 or 3 high wealth individuals. There was one guy who represented a consortium. And between them, they raised 25 million of our 50 million. We also got onto a Chinese manufacturing company called New Star Electronics. Now, New Star Electronics at that time, they were an illegitimate company. They were ripping off Sega and Nintendo products in China and selling them, okay? But the Chinese government had told them that they've got to get legitimate. So they came and visited us. We thought this would be a fantastic match. If we can get them, and they were going to invest the other 25 million, if we can get them as our manufacturers already based in China, and they're a 50% partner with us, it's the perfect combination to get quality products at a low cost, and they're investors, so they're going to make sure it works. What happened was that right at the very last minute, for about 36 hours before the auction, and let me tell you that Colin and I had done all of our homework, and we knew that we needed $50 million. We knew that the assets would probably sell. We guessed between 13 and 16 million. We were pretty accurate with that guess. But we knew that we needed about $50 million. And I'll tell you for why. We knew, let's say we bought the business and we paid $15 million for it. There is no way on God's earth that any of the suppliers to Commodore previously would supply you on credit terms. They'd all been burnt with big numbers. So we knew we would have to pay cash up front. So Colin, being the genius that he is, he worked it out we worked out 7 months and 3 days. And if our business plan ran to clockwork, then we'd be in a position where we could get credit. So we knew we needed $50 million, not only to buy the business, but to keep it going for that amount of time before we become self-sufficient. Now, at the last minute, ESCOM, through a guy called Petro Tichenko, stole New Star Electronics, promised them all sorts of things if they left us and went to them. They didn't deliver, of course, but New Star believed them. they took their $25 million away. So there we were, we got $25 million. We're sitting there in the courtroom, and we knew, let's say we did buy it, and we could have bought it, but we would have lost all those investors' money within 6 or 7 months because it just, the numbers didn't add up. But that's our integrity, you see. Can you see what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make a bid. It would be suicide. And unfortunately, we tried very hard. We tried to talk with Manfred Schmidt, who was the founder of ESCOM, and in fact, Commodore UK, we were the last surviving subsidiary because we were so profitable. You know, because we had a solid business, we didn't do dodgy deals. We didn't do sale or return and all that kind of stuff. We marketed well, we sold the product well, and the product was always in demand. So anyway, it was 17 months, almost to the day, after the parent company went bankrupt that we eventually had to declare bankruptcy. But just prior to our declaring bankruptcy, Colin and I went to see Manfred Schmidt, and we said, look, Manfred, we think that you should buy Commodore UK as a going concern, because it's a profitable business. And not only that, we could give you can inherit £6 million worth of tax credits. And then the alarm bells ring and say, well, hang on, how can you, if you're a profitable company, how come you got tax credits? Well, it's this game that they call transfer pricing, right? Which I'll go into in a second. But anyway, Manfred Schmidt said, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, he said, I'll buy Commodore UK, but only if you two stay and work for me. And neither of us wanted to work for him. And we said, we said, no, sorry, we're not interested in that. And so he turned around and he said, well, how are you guys going to feel? You now have got to go back to your office and you've got to tell all your staff that they're all out of a job because you wouldn't work for me. And Colin turned around to him and said, now you know why we will never work for you. Yeah, really. There's that kind of thing, right? But I'll just tell you about the transfer pricing situation. It's very simple. I'm just going to pick something. Let's just say, for example, Commodore UK buys an Amiga 500 from its parent company, and we pay $200 for it. Right? We have to warrant it. We have to market it. We have to give margins to the retailers and so on and so forth. So we sell it for $400, and so we make the profit. Now then, when it comes time to have to start to pay tax, suddenly we're not paying $200 and selling it for $400. Our transfer price changes to $400. So we're buying it for $400, we're selling it for $400, and we, on paper, we're losing money on every one we sell. All that's happening is that profit is going to the corporation. So that's why we had £6 million worth of tax credits. And that would have meant, if Manfred Schmidt had half a brain, they could have turned over probably about, my guess is around about 18 or 20 million pounds, and not have to pay a penny in tax by putting it through our business. Wow. To me, it's a no-brainer.
It's just fascinating to see how much stuff happens behind the scenes, that people don't know. It's actually almost like, not espionage, but almost like spy stuff. What's going on with Commodore? Guys are shipping product out just to have it come back in X amount of days to get money in their own pockets. Hiring PC engineers and wiping out the cash cow Amiga engineers. It's just really weird. So with that all being said, you're actually working on a new book, right? You have a new book coming out, and it's actually going to be on Kickstarter. Am I right?
Yes, it's actually launched today. Kickstarter is launched today. Yes, it's.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, indeed. It's. I'll be honest. After I'd written my first book, the Commodore: The Inside Story, which was hugely successful and people seemed to really love it, I didn't think I'd have anything else more to say, to tell anybody. But since I've been back in the industry, certainly the last 3 or 4 years, I'm meeting lots and lots of people who are in the industry and have been all this 25 years. And they're telling me all sorts of stories about the kind of things that were happening. After ESCOM made a mess of the business, it went to Amiga Technologies under that Petro Dachenko again. They made a mess of it. And it went from one company or an individual to another, to another, to another. And it was
even Gateway Computers, right? Even Gateway Computers had it for a time. Yeah,
Gateway and Tulip Computers. And anyway, the fact of the matter is that it was, in a lot of cases, people were just getting hold of trademarks or IPs or logos or domain names so that they could basically make money out of it. And it wasn't in my opinion, it wasn't for the right reasons. So, and from that, it became a very difficult place for developers because they were scared to use trademarks. There's lots of court cases went on. In fact, they're still going on now, some of them. And there was lots of cease and desist orders. Stop, you cannot use this. It belongs to me, and all sorts of things. It's an absolute mess. But in spite of all of that, over the last 25 years, there have been some incredible developments made in software and hardware. And so this story, the new book that I'm writing, starts with from the day in the courtroom when ESCOM bought the assets, and I was actually in the courtroom, so it's a good point for me to start, I guess. What happened to ESCOM, how they screwed it up, what happened to Amiga Technologies, and then where it goes to thereafter, from one company, one individual to another, to another, to another. And they were like parasites, ripping shreds away from scavengers, ripping shreds away from Commodore and the Amiga. Anyway, the story goes right through to today, 25 years, and it tells a story of how, in spite of all of those difficult times, we have developed some amazing, amazing products. And so I've called the book From Vultures to Vampires, because you may know, your audience may know that the Vampire is one of the new products, and the standalone Vampire 4 is one of the most incredible bits of technology I've seen for a very, very long time. And it just seemed a very fitting title for the book. So I'm telling the whole story, who got what, who sued who, what happened, and all the rest of it. It's a lot of information there. And basically the subtitle of the book is 25 Years of Copyright Chaos and Technology Triumph. So I think it's a really fitting name for the book. And I'm actually co-authoring with Trevor Dickinson, he's a huge, very well-known figure in the Amiga circles. He's the owner of Aeon Technologies. And it happened, he and I have been friends since I came back into the industry 5 years ago. And when I told him about what I was going to write, he then told me he's got lots and lots of stuff that he's actually recorded since those days when I wasn't around, because after Commodore went, I got out of the industry completely, went different life. I went under the radar. But he's got all this information already logged and written down. So we're now co-authoring it. And the ideal thing is that he'll tell it from the way it was reported when ESCOM bought this and so on and so forth. And I'm now interviewing the people that were around at that time and getting their viewpoint as of today. So we've got this fantastic broad perspective then and now, and putting things in place. And I think it's going to be a fantastic, exciting book.
Now, the most important question I'm going to ask you this entire 40 minutes we've been talking is, how do you feel about how much more powerful the Amiga was than the PC and Mac?
Yeah, well, it's another example of just wasted opportunity, really. I mean, I don't know, there's been a lot of rumors around, but the thing that really saddened me the most about when ESCOM bought the assets, Colin and I were over in Westchester doing our due diligence at the same time as ESCOM were. And, they didn't even go in and visit the engineers, the Amiga engineers. They didn't visit them. They didn't even talk to them. But I did, and I went over to them, and there's a guy there called Dr. Ed Hepler, along with Dave Haney and other people, but Dr. Ed Hepler, and he showed me the product that he was working on, had been for the last 18 months, which was codenamed Ombre, and you've never seen anything like it in your life. This was, in essence, it was an HP RISC-based core, to which they put into it a 3D rendering engine, a blitter, a chunky planar. It had 5.1 surround sound stereo, which was state of the art in '94. And I'm not kidding you. He showed it to me cobbled together in software, of course, and it wasn't a finished chip or anything. But what that could do, I've not seen anything like it since. There's nothing on the market today that comes close. Now, for me, the sad thing is that ESCOM didn't even look at it. They didn't take it. They let all the engineers go. So how can you develop a new technology if you don't retain the brains? I mean, I
They
don't
weren't
think that's
interested.
rocket science.
They were
No.
simply they were trying to milk the existing technology for all they could and leave it, which is a shame.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing is really so ridiculous because, as we mentioned before, Colin and I, we had a business plan, and we knew that, of course, that the Amiga in its then current form could only last so long. But one of the things that we had developed, we had designed. We worked with a German company, and we had a tower case designed. And what we were going to do was that we were going to make it so that anybody with an Amiga of any kind, whether it's a 500, 600, 1200, 1000, 2000, 3000, or whatever, would be able to upgrade by going into their little computer dealers, the ones who we all depend on because they're really good at their job. I'm not talking about the multiples like the Sears and stuff like that. They'd be able to go in and say, right, I've got this, and I want to upgrade. So they'd be able to get a tower case, and they'd be able to put upgraded motherboard in, and then use some of their own peripherals, and then gradually, as they wanted to, they could expand and grow. To support that, we were going to sell PCBs on their own. The people who wanted to do just that, and this whole thing was called Commodore Infinity, Amiga Infinity, which it's the name we come up with, everything ready to launch on it. But of course, in the meantime, while we'd obviously do that as long as we could, we knew that, for example, Ombre, there's no way it could be backwards compatible because it was just so far in advance. But we'd have built a product range based around Ombre that would take over from Amiga. So we have something new for the future. That was our intention. We would have had nothing to do with manufacturing PCs or manufacturing anything else, just Amiga products. And we would obviously license technology to people. We might look at doing all the peripherals, which of course Commodore never even did themselves. You look at GVP. They did all the peripherals, and we didn't make anything out of that. That's nonsense. We should have done it in conjunction with them, work with them, share the costs, and both. You build a whole business which is built on solid foundation that way.
I think, for that to interrupt you, I think that might be more of when Commodore had like the PET and the Commodore VIC-20, the Commodore 64. That was more of a Commodore made the machine and just let it go, and they let the community build all the peripherals. And I think when Amiga came in, it was never seen as anything more than just like a Commodore 64 to some of that management, where we'll sell the machine and let everyone else worry about the peripherals. I think that might have been one of Commodore's problems. They didn't see the Amiga for what it was when they acquired it. They got it really in spite of Atari. They had a nice machine. They were going to sell it. It was pretty advanced, but they didn't really know what they had. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're absolutely right. But again, you see, it's all down to the personnel that they hired. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs, and I know I probably shouldn't say that because he was, in some ways, he was a competitor, but he was a very, very smart man. And he's the book of his quotes out there. I've not actually read the book, but there's one quote of his that I absolutely live by. And that quote says, "You don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. You hire smart people and let them tell you what to do." And Commodore never did that.
Yeah, my son says that to me all the time.
But it's true. It's so true. Let's get back to we were talking about the CD32, and you said we didn't have it in America because it was stuck in the Philippines. But see, there's another example of Commodore and Mehdi Ali's recruitment policy. He, at the same time as he hired Bill Sidness, he recruited a new head of manufacturing. I can't remember the guy's name, which is terrible, but I just can't. Anyway, he said we had manufacturing in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and various other places that we'd had for a long, long time. And he said, close them all down. We're gonna build a place in the Philippines. Now, my initial thought to myself was, why on earth would we want to do that? We have no business in the Far East. I'm not saying we only have a little business. We had no business. We weren't selling anything into the Far East. Why would you build a manufacturing plant that's 4 or 5 weeks by sea from your main market, which is Europe? It didn't make any sense. Now, do you know why this guy decided that he wanted to build a factory in the Philippines?
There must have been some kind of kickback of some kind.
Well,
Vacation
let me tell you.
Vacation home.
The company that he worked for prior to joining Commodore had a place in the Philippines, and he had his mistress there.
You weren't
Leave
wrong
it to the
there,
mistress.
Mr.
Yeah.
Doug.
That's the
Okay,
truth.
I have had my mistress since 1989, so I can't fully blame the guy on that one.
Isn't it amazing
Well,
though, that something so monumental comes down to something as basic as a guy didn't want to be too far away from his girlfriend on the side?
yeah, it's outrageous when you think about it. I mean, this was a $1 billion corporation, and that's why
So,
I think
Madam Fifi took down $1 billion corporation, more or less.
Yeah.
well, they all added their own little bits. It didn't need a lot of help.
Well, there's been a lot of bad times we talked about it. We got your book on Kickstarter, but tell me something that at Commodore was just something that you always remember was a good thing, whether it was a personal experience with one of the engineers, working with the Amiga, or something else, meeting with a vendor. What was just something that always stuck with you, like the Steve Jobs quote? When Steve Jobs quoted that, "I wish my Apple was as good as the Amiga," right after he said that quote,
Hey, wait a second here.
what's the next thing?
That's not what he
said.
said.
It's in the book. It's in the book.
He didn't say that. That's in Glen's
Oh,
book.
it's there.
Because
No, it's there.
once you go Mac, you don't go back.
Right, because it's too slow. So you have no choice.
Yeah, I mean that could be a discussion that goes on forever. But no, what I'd like to talk about is yes, it's in a way it's a personal triumph that is probably going to make me sound very big-headed, but frankly I don't care. I'll tell you exactly what happened and why the UK became so successful at what we did. Was that I had another new MD came in over me. And this guy, his name is Steve Franklin. He's actually passed away now, sadly. But when he came in, he was from the business system side of business. And so when he came in, the first thing he did, he fired all of our business systems people that were in Commodore, people that sold our PCs and stuff. He just fired them all and brought all his own people in. He did not even speak to me for 2 weeks, not a word, because I was in charge of the consumer division, right? Well, they call us the toy boys, right? But anyway, he came into office on this Monday morning after 2 weeks, and he said, "Pleasance, my office now." Sat me down. He said, "Look," he said, "there's no easy way to say this," he said, "but," he said, "if I knew anybody who understood your side of the business, you wouldn't be here now."
Ouch.
I mean, I said, "Oh, thanks a lot."
Great
And
pep talk.
yeah, lovely, yeah. And he said, "No," he said, "I've got nothing against you," he said, "but I've been brought in here and I've been told to change the whole ethos of Commodore UK. I don't really know why." So he spent about 20 minutes telling me all of his rules and regulations about integrity and honesty and all this stuff, right? All of which I've lived by my whole life. So it finished, and I said, "Steve, that's perfectly okay by me." And I said, "I'll tell you what, Steve, I'll make you a deal. You ain't in any position to make an effing deal with me." I said, "No, hear me out." I said, "If you let me do what I want to do with this side of the business, I'll either bring you more business than you've ever seen in your life before, or you'll have a reason to get rid of me. What do you want to do?" I said, "Look," and I pointed over to his desk. I said, "What's that over there?" It was an Amiga 500. He said, "It's an effing computer." I said, "What that is a piece of plastic with some keys on it." I said, "Have you got any idea how difficult it is to market a piece of plastic with some keys on it? That's not going to sit. You let me do what I want to do. From now on, we do not sell computers, we sell dreams." Exactly the terminology I used. "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to put a pack together that just looks so fantastic on the outside with illustrations of what this thing will do for you. We'll put in the best possible games, the games that belong, that are going to be the top hits if we can. We must always put in productivity software, word processing, art, and stuff like that, so the parent justifies the purchase, right?" But I said, "Let me do that." And he said, "Okay." So I sat around with my team and we talked about things. And what had just been announced was that a company called Ocean Software, they'd just come back from Hollywood and they'd just paid $1 million for the rights to use Batman the movie as a game, the news and the name. $1 million. So I went to these guys, the co-managing directors, and I said, "Gentlemen, I'm now going to give you a proposition which you will either have the balls to go with, or you'll send for the men in the white coats to come and drag me away. Right? Well, I said, what do you want to do? I said, okay. I said, Batman the movie. I said, when that product is finished, and they estimated it was going to be, I think it was September, following September. I said, I want you to give that to me in my pack exclusively for 2 months. You don't sell it on its own across the counter to anybody. I want it for 2 months in my pack only. Right? I said, I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces, and I didn't want to pay you very much for it.
That sounds like a deal I want.
Yeah, well, the first thing he said was send for the men in the white coats, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and I explained to him, I said, look, I said, remember, I've got a very big marketing budget, and what I want to do is my pack will reflect your game. It's going to be so much about, so the fact that there is an Amiga inside will be incidental. Anyway, they said, look, David, we're worried about a couple of things. They were worried that our dealers are going to be really pissed off, because if you got that game for 2 months before I have, they're going to be angry. And I said, well, I think you're right. But my guess is they'll only be angry for about 48 hours. Why? I said, because if my plan works, they'll be selling a £400 product instead of a £40 product. I know what I'd prefer. Yeah, you're right. They then said, we've done all the calculations. We've just paid out $1 million for the rights to the game. We've estimated it's going to cost us $1 million to make the game. And we've done all our numbers, and we know what we need to sell in order to not only break even, but to make a profit. And we're afraid that your activity is going to alter those figures. Anyway, the net result was that they decided that they would go for it. And I was right about their dealers. They were angry for 48 hours, and then they weren't angry anymore. Ocean ended up selling 5 times their highest estimate of sales.
Nice.
And I didn't take 10,000 pieces from them. I took 186,000 pieces, because that's how many packs we sold in 12 weeks at Christmas. 186,000 Amiga 500 Batman packs. So you can see why I talk about that, because it changed the whole face of marketing. And if you notice, not long after that, Sega and Nintendo all started putting packs together, but we did it first.
Yep, I'm proud to have one right here. Got
my
cartoon pack right there.
Yeah,
that's one of yours right there.
Yeah, Deluxe Paint in there, D-Paint 3, that one. Yeah.
I thought that was a giant box of cereal.
Well, I mean, now you know why it's appealing to kids, with that big, bold, classic cartoon logo and everything.
It looked like it.
Well, it probably is. It's gone.
No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I was going to say it probably is a cereal, because you couldn't get your kids down at breakfast. They'd rather be playing that every morning.
So the 500 was probably one of the most popular machines that they sold to the Amiga line. We were running out of time. I want to touch real quick about the 600. I know originally it was supposed to be the 300. It was supposed to be a lower cost reduced 500. What the heck were they thinking, pushing that now as a 600 and it costing more to build and sell than their top selling 500 that no one wanted at all? How'd that come out?
Well, the 300 was my idea. I actually went to Medi Alley in the UK, because we did bundles also for the 64. We kept the 64 alive 2 years beyond its real sell-by date, just by doing good packaging and stuff like that. But this Christmas came, and I said, that's it. We're not going to sell anymore. So I went to Medi and I said, right, this is what I think we should do. I said, if we can have a cost-reduced, cut-down version of the Amiga, I want to retain that demographic audience. Those people who paid £200 for a 64 pack, maybe we can get up to 250 for a low-cost Amiga, with very basically, but you could add to it as you needed to make it, into a full spec. So that would be the idea, is that you'd have a replacement for the 64 in terms of the economies of it. And I said, we must call it the 300, so it doesn't confuse anybody in terms of its specification. So that, it was not meant to be something greater than a 500. And the net result was that they produced something which cost more to make in the first place. So we made less money on it. They called it the 600, which killed all the sales of the 500. And then we had thousands of people that were not very happy. They'd bought a 600 and it wasn't anywhere near as good as the 500 was. There were some features on it that were better.
Yeah, it was a couple of things, but it wasn't worth more money than the 500 was.
No, absolutely not. See, so you come up with a good idea, and they just can't even execute it. But they didn't even tell us. Honestly, I suddenly got a whole shipload of 600s in my warehouse. What the hell is this? But the worst thing is that they all have A300s on the motherboard.
That's right. If you did open it up, that's right. The early machines, you open it up on the motherboard, it said A300.
Yeah,
that's right.
And so that's absolutely how it came. I asked for the product, and I'm certain that if we had an A300 as requested, that we would have kept that audience, because that certain socioeconomic group, they just can't afford anymore. We just lost them. So they're the ones who bought all the Nintendos and the Game Boys and all that, because that's all they could afford. We lost that whole audience.
Well, David, I really thank you for coming here today. We could talk literally for hours, and I hope we'll can have you on again, bring up more things. But I want to talk one more time about your Kickstarter. I don't know, Steve, if you want to bring that up one more time or just talk about it. But you have a Kickstarter that started today for your new book.
Yes. Yeah, it launched today.
120 already. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's I think it's a bit higher than that now. Yes, it's very good. It's only been launched since this morning. And
yep. The Retro Buzz, we're here to help you, man. We got you, these guys. We got you covered.
Well, I promise you that it will be a great book. I do produce a good quality product. But if anybody hasn't actually bought the original book, which is Commodore The Inside Story, you can get that from, if you send me to davidpleasance.com, email at davidpleasance.com, I can put you onto that. I've only got a few copies left. I'm not sure whether I'm going to actually reprint it or not, to be honest with you. But it's a very good read, and it's available as a download as well, EPUB, Mobi, and PDF. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of it. There's also an audiobook version. So
right up my alley. Well, I mean, I'm just always doing something, so I could listen to it while I'm mowing the grass or something. So that's usually what I do.
I can tell you, it's been narrated by Dan Wood, who is a professional radio DJ. He also he does the Retro Hour podcast in the UK, which is very, very popular. And it's over 8 hours, 8.25 hours, I think, the audio book, because it's 368 pages. It's a very, very meaningful book with lots in 368 pages and 90,000 words, I think there's in it.
I have over 3 acres to mow, so pictures. I'll be good.
Hope there's some pictures in it.
Oh yes, there is. Yeah, there is pictures. But I can't
there we go. I'm sold.
Yeah, I can't help with the pictures with an audio book though. Even I can't do that technology.
Yeah.
So you said your David Pleasance is in the process of getting made, the .com, right? So if people or it's remade.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty certain that it's open now.
Okay.
But it's not. It may not be fully completed yet.
Okay.
But it's easy. Email at davidpleasance.com will get through to me anytime at all, and then I can direct you to anything you want.
Well,
even if you don't want.
like Glen said, we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on, and guys, check it out. Check it out. Stay tuned for some post show here on some of the announcements that happened this week. But we want to thank Mr. Douglas Smith, Mr. Cool Toy. A lot of great knowledge,
and his hair,
and his hair,
and his beautiful hair.
Yeah, no. I want to thank David for coming on. This has absolutely been educational. The Commodore and Amiga was unfortunately before my time, so this is great to hear it from the absolute source to learn about the scoop and everything. So I greatly appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. It was one hell of a ride, let me tell you. 12 and a half years of bliss. I couldn't wait to get to work every day. It was just so special to be part of that whole thing. Very blessed.
And want to thank this guy here, because this is the guy that got it all set up, and I know he was giddy like a drunken schoolboy waiting for this episode.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, because like Doug said, the Amiga was before his time,
and
so a lot of people don't really understand, and yours, and a lot of people don't understand how much this machine really did change the industry, especially in desktop video multimedia, even though Apple was always touting it. And I think you should get that book and his previous book to read up on it, because this machine here has got so much more legacy than you guys realize. And it's just a real shame that, like you said, German company Escom bought it and basically snuffed it out. And no one will know where this poor little guy's going to go or be.
Well,
Have you guys seen the Vampire 4, the standalone?
I have, and that's it. So these guys don't know what that is. So originally there was an accelerator board made for the Amiga called the Vampire, which basically made tons of new features that the machine didn't have. But now there's a standalone. We don't even need the Amiga computer, but it can emulate an Amiga and do a whole lot more. And
basically, in a nutshell, what it is, it's about the size of a smartphone PCB, and put it when you switch it on, it will run A500, 600, 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000 software. It runs the 4000 software 30 times faster than the 4000. It runs the Amiga 500 300 times faster, and it's absolutely flawless. Now, if that's not enough, at the switch of a button, it'll run all Atari ST software. And if that isn't enough, at the switch of another button, it runs all Mac software up to 8.0.
That's easy. Anything can run Mac software easy. That's
but
cake.
the problem with the Mac is you've got to make sure the spider hasn't died inside.
That might have been true before they went to Intel, but now that they're on Intel, they're on pretty level playing fields with the PC. I use both. I do. I use both because I have certain things that have to be done on Mac and have to be done on PC. So it'll be interesting. I'm gonna have to pick Glen's brain and see what I should buy and mess around with. But before we leave you guys, we want to let you know about next week. Who's our guest, Glen? And while he's looking for that, At Games is doing a summer league. If you guys aren't signed up for that, or you're not aware of that, we're going to show you that here in just a few minutes. But Glen, who's on deck for next week?
We will have New Wave Toys on next week.
Woot woot. That'll be right up Doug's alley.
Yeah, I love those.
So make sure you guys tune in for that. For those of you that want to hear us banter a little bit about this week's announcements, stick around for some.
And you guys actually have something to talk about next time.
Yes. Well, hey, it's educational, right? You sit here and you listen to, because it was before our time. I mean, so to talk intelligently, let the man who was around for this talk intelligently about it. So, guys.
Well, I hope your audience has enjoyed it. It's been great for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for asking me. It's a privilege.
Absolutely. Well, like Glen said, we'll have to.
The honor was mine.
We'll have to get you on for the next time. But guys, stay with us. We'll be right back. And for those that don't stick around, we'll see you next week here on the Retro Buzz.
Want to qualify to win a Legends Gamer or Legends Ultimate? Participate in the Summer League event, and you may be able to do just that. Current Legends Ultimate owners can participate in the 10-week Summer League event, starting June 5th, 2020, and ending August 9th, 2020. During that time, there will be a series of weekend leaderboard events for select games each week. This is a battle to the end. Practice up, make your scores count, and top the charts once and for all, and have a beauty of a prize to show for your hard work. Have fun on the leaderboards, and good luck.
The Retro Buzz starts right after this.
So I decided, I was telling the guys here that we were going to run the intro again, just because we had a great show with David, but we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the announcements for this week. But guys, did you see? Before we get into that, Arcade 1UP has some countercades on sale today. Did you guys happen to see the email?
Yeah, Father's Day special going on, $125. So
beautiful.
Nice.
Dig Dug. I have to get some Dig Dug. Must have some Dig Dug. Dig Dug.
You got to do me a favor, Glenn. You have to say Autobots inferior.
Autobots transform.
I couldn't resist. This is so close.
We always have
Thank you, Douglas. I appreciate that.
We always have such good discussions after this, and I wanted to get everything situated here. Let me get Glen's Robotron here. We do have the call-in line, so you guys can call in. But do you guys think it's worth picking up these countercades, or do you think we should wait for the next revision of it? I mean, $129 isn't nothing to sneeze at.
I think the other ones are going to be $99, right? They're smaller. So these are going to be bigger, slightly for $129-ish. Or you want the smaller ones? No, I think the screen's smaller. I think everything was a little bit smaller.
Maybe you want to jump on. I want Dig Dug. I want it in the worst way.
Size matters, and you want to jump on it. Perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah. So that's something I want to kind of jump on that. So.
So you said.
Yeah, so let's start at the top. We do have the phone lines open, so we encourage you guys. We are recording this, okay? We're going to have this playing in reruns on the site, and I'm not going to upload it as a podcast, but we might upload it as a YouTube special edition video, because we're not going to go really long with this, maybe half an hour. But, guys, the announcements this week, obviously, Doug, I saw you talked about it a little bit on your video and stuff, but I know people want to kind of get our opinions of the announcements. So let's start with At Games, since they hit this week really quick, fast and furious. The pinball, right? 32-inch screen versus the 24 that we see with Toy Shock and Arcade 1UP and some of the other 3/4 scales that are out there, like Pinferno and some of these other ones. Doug, we'll kind of bounce it off of you first. Do you think the size?
My voice is shot.
I know. We'll give Glenn a little bit of rest here for a little bit. Do you think the size matters for this closer to full scale, or do you think people really aren't going to really care between 24 and 32-inch?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it matters. It's going to help people make that decision one way or the other, because not everybody does have room for a full size or a 90% scale pinball. So they're going to kind of lean towards those 3/4 scale machines. And there's people that want closer to that full authentic pinball machine where it's, ginormous and it sticks out all, and they've got the room. They want that full on pinball experience. So they're going to gravitate towards the At Games machine. So I think it's great that they're so different, because it helps the consumers just lickety split, make a decision. For people that literally want that bigger play field, there were looking at maybe the Toy Shocks or the Arcade 1UPs and thinking, well, I could add a bigger screen. You don't have to. I mean, there's already one out there available. So it's nice to have, different levels and tiers, so to speak, for the different consumer options.
And I know, Glenn, one of the things that you said to us, like, you didn't know if you even wanted to go the route of pinball because you're running out of room. But now with the At Games one, you now have the ability to bring your own games. What do you think about that?
Well, space is always an issue. Pinball, I love pinball. I got a small one here.
Is that what you
7-inch play field?
That's what you 3D printed?
7-inch play field, yeah. No, this one is not. This actually was the frame was actually made by Dwayne Ringo, who's a friend of mine, who actually builds these small machines. But I did the inside, which is why it's not working. Probably sent it to Dwayne to fix it. But it's got a 7-inch and a 5-inch screens on here. But size matters. Does women tell me that all the time, so that's why I'm so fortunate. But if you look at the two, I mean, the Arcade 1UP had a 24-inch main panel, and you got a 32-inch main panel in the At Games. And if you put them side by side, the At Games is gonna, I think, look more towards a real machine. But it comes down to the software. Is it gonna run at 60 frames per second?
It will. 1080p at 60 frames a second.
We haven't seen it. That's what they're saying. We have to see it. So the one thing I will say is that people running in a room like me, the arcade one-up might be a better choice. Or I could simply tell Colt he's got to live outside or on the deck, and I could put it in his room. So it just comes down to those type of things. I mean, some wives may say, listen, that 32 is too big. I don't want it in the house. That small one's fine. But it comes down to how they play as well. Arcade one-up's been very big. We were talking about this past year about using the solenoids and getting the tactile feedback. Again, we have a paper from Ad Games saying they're going to do all these things. We haven't seen it. Doug, Retro Ralph, and a few of the people got their hands on it at the show. So they played it. So they got to experience how the screen looks, how the dynamics of the machine works. I will say, after the Legends Ultimate, I mean, Ad Games hit the mark. I mean, they said they were coming out this machine, and they hit it out of the park with the machine. It's very popular. It's living up to its expectations. So I don't doubt them that they're going to do it. But right now, it's just a piece of paper, and we need to see it. So I think Ad Games needs to get one in our hands as soon as possible.
At least
we'll know. Yeah.
Yeah. Something tangible.
Well, and I know it's coming. They can't release everything all at once. But here's the thing. At Games, they're balling right now. They came to play. They ain't messing around. So having this as just about, it's 90% of an actual scale pinball machine. And
right.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I mean, I want it. I'm probably going to get an arcade one-up because, we're not going to get into this war, arcade one-up versus At Games, even though the companies will do that war. We're not going to do that. We are staying completely neutral right down the middle.
Sweden!
I personally, and we'll get to the arcade one-up, I'll probably get the Star Wars arcade one-up just because I want it for a collector piece.
I will too.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be placed against the wall on one side.
Well, so see, that's the side that I'm going to...
Kennedy mess that's on the other side.
I'm going to take a picture of that side in my arcade, and I'm going to showcase it as my cover photo on Facebook just for you. So you have to see it.
You would not
every single time you
go to your family and your fans. You wouldn't want to do that to your family and fans to show that abomination.
If they knew it was going to bother you, I'm sure everybody in the chat room right now is going to be like, do it, because they're going to know it's going to get on your nerves.
If that's the case, I'm going to have to talk this way from now on the show. I'll always talk just like this from now on, if that's what you're going to do.
Well, if he's going to talk like that, then I am definitely...
every day.
Then I'm going to definitely get Kathleen Kennedy on the show.
Glenn, you just sounded like every pop song from 2008 to 2016.
Oops, I did it again. He's breaking my heart. Kathleen Kennedy wrote Star Wars. Oh, baby, baby.
All right. Bravo on that. At least he's using the right mic now. And Rexer, if you're watching right now, I can sympathize with you. I really can. I was sitting there watching that last night. But no, I think. But what about the other thing that At Games released? They also brought out third-party options. Right now, you have marquees.
Right.
You've got graphics. We don't know what that's going to be like. Steering wheels, because Glenn, you knew how hard up I was trying to get that other one working.
Yep.
And now light gun technology, and I know Arcade One Up had a similar announcement. We'll get to that. But it seems like these companies have figured out how to give us accurate.
They're listening.
Guns.
Wait, they're listening. What?
Well,
they're listening.
Yeah. They're delivering on the demands of the consumers, which is great.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious. I've not been a super light gun fan, and we'll kind of get into that when we get to Arcade One Up. But I'm interested to see, because I don't want a bar. I have one of those for the Xbox. I have one of those for the Wii. I don't want that on an arcade. I just don't. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys are implementing it. I'm excited for it. I think they've hit it. And then, if that wasn't enough, they said they're partnering with a certain studio. And now we're going to get all these games. So now, hang on a second. We've got a caller calling in. Let's see what the caller wants to add to it. So we've got a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
It's me, Angel. What's up, guys?
Hey, Angel.
Angel.
What's up, guys? What's up? Listen, I totally agree. Size does matter, but I think the arcade one-up is a winner for me for the simple fact that it's smaller.
Okay.
Not as big as the ad games. I mean, and I always say it, and I'm not talking bad about it, but the ad games system is just too big. I mean, if you really think about it, we all wanted smaller phones. Back in the days when we were using the big giant telephones, the gray boxes with the antennas, we wanted smaller. All of a sudden, we want bigger screens. So it's like we don't really know what we want when it comes to technology. Either we want smaller or we want bigger.
Go ahead, Glenn. Say your famous, the saying that you always say. Go ahead.
It's better to have options than not to have the option. It's better to have more choices than no choices at all.
Oh, I totally agree, but I think
That's what I told the girl on the third date. Didn't listen to me though. Oh well.
I just think that if we're running out of space and we don't got room, I definitely don't got room. But I definitely want the arcade one-up pinball because I want a pinball system at all. I've never had one, and I definitely would want one. I don't think I lean to a 32-inch big giant machine because I'd rather just go to the arcade and just struggle with that one.
Well, let's speculate for a second, because if they've got Farsight Studios was partnered with Toy Shock. Okay, so if you put the math together, you do 2 and 2, you figure out what's going on. If the only room I have is for the arcade one-up and the At Games one, I'll donate the Toy Shock to my kids' church. It's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. I'd like to keep it. I'd like to have all three and kind of compare, because everybody's budget is different. And let's say Toy Shock drops the price to $250 or $300. For some, it's not a big, and like I keep going back to this. I know we talked about the lag, but honestly, I've had people over my house. They haven't complained about it. You only notice it when you go to Pinball Effects over on the Legends. I mean, that's kind of when I was kind of like, whoa, I've been wrong all this time type of thing,
Right. I mean, budget-wise, I guess it does matter as well, but I think with the limited space that I have, Arcade One-Up is going to have my money ahead of At Games.
And it's also how the machine looks too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen what the Arcade One-Up looks like, and it's a nice looking machine. I will say that the Legends Ultimate, it's a bigger machine, but it wasn't the most attractive machine.
Yeah.
We've been able to put new decals on it and make it look better, but that's one thing that does draw people to is what it looks like. It's not just the gameplay. It could be a little bit smaller, but if it's a more attractive looking machine in your man cave or your woman cave or your kid's cave, that might be a better thing. And again, think about also the demographic. Again, we are adults. We want it. But again, these machines aren't always designed for us. The Arcade One-Up is still designed, for kids, but we're just the big kids. So that smaller playfield, the smaller machines are going to fit better in, a kid's room if that's where it's going to end up going. Where the At Games version is going to be much bigger, less chance for going into a kid's room versus going into a main play area.
Right. I mean, Arcade One-Up really came ahead of the game because of the fact that we were able to put arcade systems in our houses that didn't cost $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, we're not challenging that. We're not challenging that. We're just
Well, you buy 14 or 15 of them, you spend that money.
Yeah.
But,
and
because honestly, I applaud all three companies, Toy Shock, Arcade One-Up, and At Game, even bringing virtual pinball to an economical level.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, it's 4K, 2K if you build it your own. I mean, astronomically priced compared to what they're bringing to the market at a $500, $600 value right now. I mean, 2 years ago, we would have thought that was impossible. Now this is, not only possible, it's getting offered from 3 different sources. I mean, that's amazing in my eyes.
And you got to think. I mean, you got to think about it. 90% of the people that are watching these shows that any of us do, or on YouTube or whatever, these guys are buying 10, 12, 15, buying every cabinet, Glenn, that's out in the market, and we're the exception to the rule, right? So if we had the room, it doesn't matter what Arcade One-Up brought out, or Toy Shock, or At Games, we'd probably buy every single one of them if we had the funds and if we had the room. I mean, that's just being fair.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's definitely true.
So we're not.
I mean, just to have your just to have a big room that looks like an arcade room.
Exactly.
I mean, I think everybody just wants that. It wouldn't even matter of how many cabinets you put in there.
Yeah.
They just want that nostalgia in their own house.
Yeah.
Right.
But
right. And when you go to a real arcade, you're not going to see just Atari cabinets or just Sega cabinets, or Stern cabinets. There are all different kinds. And you see behind me, I got all different kinds. I got different size ones. Your arcade would have been the exact same thing. So it just comes down to, is the machine you want at a price point you can afford? Buy it.
Right. Exactly. Angel, we appreciate you calling in, man. We're going to let you go.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll see if anybody wants to else call in. We've got the number up here, 610-936-9535. What's your thoughts on it? We kind of got everything there with ad games.
The more thing I'm disappointed with is that the micro consoles are delayed until 21. That's what bothered me. And I heard John D mention the machine I told him I wanted to see. He mentioned the Vectrex. So I'm glad to hear that that's on the table. So,
well,
I would love to see a micro Vectrex.
So at Arcade 1-Up put out a silhouette teaser, if you will, the day before, and I think the majority of us at least got 2 or 3 out of the 4 that were there, right? I think people got stumped up on the pinball. I know we all kind of saw the silhouettes, and for those I know, well, Doug, you are a big fan of Street Fighter, Capcom.
Yeah, that's my sweet spot. That's 90s arcade fighters.
Talk about that a little bit. Talk about what they released for that, and are you going to get one of those?
Yeah, I'm super excited for both those. I'm glad that they're giving each title its own release, as opposed to kind of trying to mash it all together, because X-Men versus Street Fighter is an amazing game in itself. So I didn't really want to see it getting swallowed up and not get the attention that it deserves. Although, again, Marvel versus Capcom, again, another amazing fighting title that deserves its own release. So I'm glad they're splitting them up and then kind of offering different levels of games. And they hinted at, maybe some upgraded controls similar to what we saw with limited edition Marvel superheroes from last year. A lot of people were upset about the inclusion of Super Nintendo games, but honestly, I'm okay with that, because I just look at them as extras. Plus, I think it's nice to have like little side-scrolling beat-em-ups as a way to break up the monotony of fighting games. That was one of the most impressive things I thought they did on the Marvel Superheroes cabinet, was put in that Punisher arcade game, because it was a nice way to break up the monotony of fighting games for people that are not, people that are die-hard, eat, breathe, sleep fighting genre fans. There's something for somebody else to play that maybe he's like Glen and is a button masher and said, hey, you know what, I don't want to button mash anymore. I want to have some controlled chaos, and I want to play as Wolverine. I want to go adamantium rage on some people and slash some bad guys. So now you've got that option with War of the Gems and Mutant Apocalypse. So I think that's good. Both cabinets look great. I'm excited to hopefully I have a suspicion that we're going to see some online capabilities with those games as well. And I think that'll be fantastic, because as everyone knows, the fighting online community is ever present and ever growing, even for these older titles. But I'm very excited to see these, specifically for the fact that a lot of these, specifically X-Men versus Street Fighter, it wasn't super prevalent in the arcades. It was actually kind of hard to find. And then when it got released to console, like if you try to buy a PlayStation 1 version or a Sega Saturn version of that game, you're going to pay $100 for that game alone. So to spend $400 and own an arcade accurate version of it, that's a deal in my opinion.
Before we get to Glenn, because I know he's got the fever to talk about the one cabinet that's coming, the pinball, since it is a Marvel pinball, does that change your mind a little bit then about the Star Wars one? Are you going to do both?
It's going to make me do both. I'll be honest. I'm a massive comic book nerd. I've literally got a long box of comics sitting 2 feet away from me right now. I got Marvel comic posters and everything through and through this media room. I'm a Marvel nerd more than a DC nerd, so I like them both. But Marvel's where my heart and soul really lies, so I'm gonna have to get them. I love those Pinball FX tables from Zen Studios, so I'm gonna have to get them both. And I haven't even got an idea of where I'm going to put them, but I'll like that. I may just.
Those are details. Yeah, those are small details. Glenn, there's been another cabinet. You got the fever. Tell us about it.
Which fever do I got? There's so many of them. I got to say something quick about the pinball. I may actually go for the Marvel pinball now because I'm so not a fan of those new Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars. I may actually bypass it. I'm totally serious.
What?
I'm totally serious. I love Marvel. I'm not like with Doug. You know, I like DC, but I'm a much bigger Marvel fan. But I actually may pass on the Star Wars cabinet because I really hate those abominations from Kennedy on there. I don't want to see the artwork. I don't want to see the games. And so I may go that with the pinball. So with that being said, the shooting game, the Buck Hunter, you know, I'm actually really intrigued by that one because
Are you really?
Yes, because we've been working. Me and my partner's been working on light gun technology as well, and that's the thing for this year. All these new light gun technologies, and I'm really interested to see how they get theirs going. I think it's also impressive. They're including the 2 guns. Obviously, there's got to be some electronics in each one of those guns, to work. I think the cabinet looks amazing. I like that now they're changing the style a little bit more. I just think it's just a great looking cabinet. I am dying to see how it works on I think it's still a 17-inch screen. So I'm really, really intrigued by this game. I like shooting games. I really wish it was, House of the Dead or like a Terminator 2. But I understand completely why they went with this game. And we kind of had this conversation before when they came out with Golden Tee, and the community went and it was like in an uproar.
They went with this because they love me. They love me because they know I'm a hunter.
They did. And actually,
that's why they went with it.
It should say your edition right in the bottom.
It should. It should say no boundaries outdoors. It should say that. But I'm going to be very critical with this, honestly, because I play Big Buck Hunter on the Legends Ultimate, but I use the trackball and then the fire button. It's not as accurate like you're saying with this technology. It'll be really interesting to see because even the classic version of this, which there's still some places around here that have it, it's not as accurate. Like you're aiming here and it actually shoots over here. So
the one thing I will say is, with the Star Wars cabinet, right, when that came out, I was extremely impressed at how well they did with that the yoke. It's a plastic yoke, but I think they did a really nice job for the price. I think that yoke is very, very accurate. So I kind of high hopes that that's going to translate that quality, that attention to detail to make sure that yoke was good, that the emulation was good with that yoke. You can recalibrate it. This did a really nice job with it. So I'm kind of hoping that's going to translate to this game as well with the light guns. So I'm just actually most intrigued for that one. I want to try it out. I want to see how it is. I really am.
That one's definitely on a pre-order for me, so I know that I'll actually get it. Well, I shouldn't say I'll pre-order it because pre-order is just dangerous in my opinion. But I'll at least I have a feeling it's going to be the most wanted one. They keep saying this.
I agree.
They keep saying this other one's going to be the most wanted. Let me get back to it here on the screen here. And this is kind of.
And I threw you for a loop on that. I know, but.
I know. I figured you wanted to talk. Yeah, you did, because I thought, okay, I'm going to pull this over to Glen. Glen can talk about our friend Pac-Man, but Miss Pac-Man, right?
Yep. Yep. And when I was on the Rextra show, this was kind of a hot topic here because they just released, the 40th anniversary Pac-Man, and they're doing this, and it's got Galaxian and not Galaga. But to be quite honest, with this type of machine, Miss Pac-Man is a selling point.
Yes.
All right. This is really a one-game cabinet. The other games there are really, they could have took them out, made it just Miss Pac-Man and nothing else. This machine would sell because of that. This is just one of those games that appeals to everybody. And the wives at home, I sure would have no problem telling the husband to bring me home Miss Pac-Man if there was nothing else on it. So it doesn't bother me that they released this, right after the 40th anniversary of Pac-Man, because one's got nothing to do with the other. That was just released because it was the 40th anniversary of Pac-Man. If you already had the old Pac-Man like I do, you wouldn't have gone out to get it. Now the Marvel, this is more Doug. I'll let Doug talk about this one. This is more.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When Doug was talking about it, I didn't pull it up.
That's okay. But the Miss Pac-Man, to be honest, that's a seller with just the one game. The other 3 games are insequential. It didn't matter what was on them.
Now Doug is
like ever since Arcade 1-Up first came out with the original Pac-Man, the very follow-up question everybody had was, when are you coming out with Miss Pac-Man? Where's Miss Pac-Man? Pac-Man cabinet? I mean, it's like it was just nothing but Miss Pac-Man questions. So that shows you just how feverish the community has been demanding Miss Pac-Man. So I'm like you, and I think it's going to sell itself.
And I want to get to you about what your thoughts are on how this looks like, but we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Oh, my name is Trevor.
Hey, Trevor, what's going on, man?
What's up?
Oh, not much. I'm a first-time caller, and I've been watching your show for a while now. So
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trevor. We appreciate you calling.
It's so good. I'm sorry.
So I'm very interested in those pinball machines. I've got a couple like full-size arcade games, and I've built some virtual pinball machines myself. So.
Oh, God bless you on that one.
Yeah, they can be difficult to set up.
Yeah, that's what Glen keeps telling me. I thought about doing it, and then Glen's just like, it's a nightmare. So I was like, maybe I don't want to do that, and I haven't.
I mean, there are a lot of forums, and people will help you out, if you do your research and stuff.
I think they always say Google's your friend, because I've been out there. I'm stuck. Google's your friend. I know Google's my friend. It didn't help it.
But another thing was you guys were talking about light gun games recently. And one of my arcades, I used the Ultramark aim track guns.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they work really good. I mean, the tracking on them is pretty good and everything.
Yep. I've got
now,
one.
on that version, I'm sorry, Doug, on that version, do you have to recalibrate it each time or no?
No, you don't. You do it once, and it remembers it. So.
Mm-hmm. I've got one as well. I've got actually something I found that actually made it a little easier for me to use is an expanded IR sensor, because the stock one that the aim track one comes with, it's a little more condensed. It doesn't have a wide field of view, but they've actually released I think they're called the Super or the Extreme IR sensor, something like that. They have some goofy name for them, but it's a much wider sensor, has a much wider field of view. You can get closer to your main cabinet or whatever you're playing your light guns on. I've got it on top of my TV monitor that I use for my PC, and I'm able to sit like 3 feet away and blast away with relatively great accuracy. I'd say it's probably 90% accurate as far as how close the crosshairs are to where I'm pointing. So it's, a little bit noticeable that you're not 1-to-1 as far as your screen accuracy, but it's more than acceptable for most people.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up.
In a zombie apocalypse, 90% is not going to be good enough, Doug.
Hey, if there's somebody in between me and the zombie, that's all I need.
So Trevor, let's ask you, what of all the new products that you saw this week that launched, what intrigues you the most? And it sounds like pinball's on your mind. So which cabinet are you looking at getting?
I'm definitely interested in the pinball. The At Games one's going to be pretty cool to see, when it comes out.
Cool. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing that too, but like I said, I'm probably going to get the Star Wars one. I mean, I'm a Marvel fan too, but Star Wars trumps Marvel.
Yeah.
And if I don't like the graphics or I'm done hassling Glen, then I'll just get like a Darth Vader one to put on the arcade one up and get Tyler, or I'll get Sabo and make one and just do that. Whoever's going to actually ship it in the next month or so and not a year from now. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. One more thing was, I don't know if you guys remember those Zizzle pinball machines.
Yeah, lasted for a little while. The mechanicals.
Pirates of the Caribbean and a Marvel one.
Right. Yes.
Those Marvel ones are like really hard to find and really expensive these days.
Glen, you don't have one?
I had it out. See, here's one of those kick yourself in the head moments. I could have had one, and I was like, it looks like a toy, and I didn't get it. It was years ago though. So
they're going.
I was young and dumb then.
They're
like last week.
Like $200-300, aren't they? Like used.
If you're lucky, it's a good price.
More.
Yeah, the Konami ones are almost what, $1,000?
I haven't seen that one.
Well, there's a couple of them. I know Walmart's even selling Stern ones, but I thought I saw one that was really expensive. I'm like, for that? It looked like the Star Wars one. I think they wanted $300 or $400 for the Star Wars one. It was the Kathleen Kennedy one. I think it was the Force Awakens one.
Huh.
Wait, I gotta.
Go ahead, Glen.
I can't. I can't. I don't know which voice to use for that.
Kennedy. and then we'll take her face and I'll rub it deep into that machine.
Never underestimate
No
the
mercy.
power of the Force. Go ahead, you got to say it.
No mercy. Don't underestimate the Force.
You got to love it.
Mm-hmm.
All
We
right,
got
guys, that's
comment-
all I really wanted to talk about.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you calling in and hanging out and watching.
Actually, before you hang up, really quick. So since you do have virtual pinball machines you've made already, is it just you're running it now? Do you have a machine you're running it on, like it's a virtual pinball machine, or just a monitor you playing virtual pin on? Is it a full setup?
It's got a full PC in them, and it's got a 32-inch TV playfield and about a 22-inch back screen.
So you do have it in a virtual, in a pinball style frame.
Configuration.
Yeah, I built the cabinet. It's got legs and everything. So.
Okay, so this is that wasn't my general question. This is my question. So since you have that, what's drawing you to want to purchase one of these other ones? Since you already have one of these you built yourself.
Ooh, that's a good question.
What's making you say, I've got this machine, I built it with my own two hands, it's virtual pin MAME, it's it's set up with the right PC. What has got your fever pitch? We got to get this machine, or one of them.
Well,
I would
I
assume
don't
all
know
the
if I
headaches of
really
setting
want to
that up.
purchase it. It's very interesting to see companies are starting to build it now.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think Arcade 1-Up or At Games will have the computing power to equal what you did on yours? Because we all know that virtual pin MAME and pinball has some pretty high specs. They're saying 60 frames per second. Do you really think they're going to hit that with these machines? Do you feel that they're going to be able to do it?
That's a good question because, like, you've got different software packages. You got Pinball FX3, and there's also Virtual Pinball X. So, I don't know how they're going to do that.
But with video compression the way it is today, there's got to be a way that they can compress it to get you 1080p 60 on lesser hardware. I mean, because just think about this for a second. Those net top PCs, have you guys ever seen those? They go for like 120 bucks. They're like Atom processors. You can watch Netflix at 1080p 60 on something like that. Heck, I've seen guys do it with 4K. Now, is it the same 4K that, say, Doug, you would put your Alienware PC up against? Probably not. It's going to be overly compressed. Is it something the common household user is going to see and notice? Probably not. So my thinking behind this is At Games figured out a way to have the hardware and the software compress that signal. Again, I'm assuming. I don't know this. Just with video technology. I think that's what's happening. I think more and more companies are going to start doing that, and it's not going to be something unless you take a magnifying glass and look for pixels. You're not really going to see it. It's kind of like
Prime.
It's like emulation.
Yeah,
ETA, but it's like emulation versus the original, right? I didn't see the emulation when Glenn kept talking to me about it until I actually played the original
hardware. Yeah.
The original hardware with like the TurboGrafx and stuff.
Right. There's emulation and there's recreation. Emulation is trying to emulate the original hardware. Recreation is they're taking the graphics, wrote new code to make it simulate the screen. Is it you kind of get? Is it more of a simulation versus an emulation?
So wait, Meatball Saucy is talking about. He said in there. He said they're running the Android version. They are not running the Android version. That's just it. They will be running Android versions of software of different pinballs, according to the spreadsheet, and some inside source. But they are not running an Android operating system, just like the Legends is not running an Android operating system.
Well, I think when Trevor gets the machine, he should call back.
Yeah.
Give his opinion versus his virtual pinball.
I agree.
And versus whatever machine you get. You call us back when this does get released, Trevor, and let's have a conversation.
All right, I will do that.
All right, well, Trevor, we appreciate you calling in, man.
We're going to put a pin in it. I'm going to put a pin in it right up here. Put the pin in it.
All right, man.
Trevor.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Yep, thanks.
So
we did have a super chat I wanted to.
Yeah, hit it up, man.
They just want to know, Glenn, will you be getting the Miss Pac-Man cabinet?
Ooh.
Will you be adding the marriage, so to speak?
And then we have a caller.
It is a really nice looking cabinet, so there is a possibility. Cole can sleep outside. It's all right. It's summertime now.
We have another caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Hey, it's Alex.
I'm sorry?
It's Alex.
Alex?
Alex?
Saying Alex?
That is Alex.
Oh, this is Alex. I don't know if he's using a voice morpher too, but it sounded weird. What's going on, Alex?
Hey, I just wanted to
here we go.
Kind of a little bone to pick with you guys.
Pick away.
Ooh,
pick away.
I'm very bony. Look at that.
Mr. Cool Toy caught hell last week about the Ghostbusters and all that and everything.
Wait,
I just want to let you guys, Steven, my wife and I saw your arcade on YouTube, and I literally went, holy cow, I want to do that.
Wait.
So,
don't get me in trouble with your wife.
I love it. It's
listen.
well, the funny thing is, when she sees me watching Doug's videos, she's like, oh my God, how much is this going to cost me?
See,
and then Glen makes stuff to make these things better, and yeah, you guys are just, bleeding me dry.
Hey,
but no, I love all the content you guys put out. I watch you guys religiously. I mean, my wife was actually in my arcade one day, just hanging out with me. She was like, okay, I get it. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Now with Miss Pac-Man being the pre-order, she wants it for her office.
So let me show you this, just because I know people think I'm making this stuff
you gotta
up.
stop making my husband spend all this money. I need to buy some shoes and a purse. You gotta stop. Ain't got no time for your games. Get my husband and my man spending money on this stuff.
So this is what Alex is talking about. So last week, this is all Doug's fault, just so everybody can see. This is on my wall in the arcade. Okay. This is all that's come so far. I've got the Stay Puft and I've got the Gree Ghost Slimer. Again, nostalgic. My son has his all open. He's ready for the actual Ghostbusters to arrive. And the rest of them will show up and be on this wall over here or another wall. But, everybody always, they think we're joking around. But Doug, you cost me money, dang it.
I do what I can.
And Steven, you cost me money.
He's trying to keep the economy going. No. Doug's doing his part to keep the economy going.
Just whatever you do, Alex, don't tell your wife to go to my profile, because I don't want to get all this hate messages. Like, why are you having my husband build? Because
you're not going to get that until I get my NBA Jam, which is actually going to go in my hall bathroom.
Oh, you better take a picture of that. That'll be
most definitely.
That'll be classic.
Hey, I got another question for you guys. Did you watch the post interview with Mr. Bacharach about Miss Pac-Man? He actually named different games than there are on the pictures.
He did.
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said Rally X.
Dig Dug.
Oh my God. Yeah, Dig Dug.
Dig Dug. That's the one I want with that. I don't care about. I like Rally X, but I'll take Dig Dug over Rally X.
I only hope that they do make this a 4-way directional joystick like they did with the Pac-Man. The game has got to have a 4-way direction lock.
Gates.
All games, 4 direction. Yes, has to be.
You're gonna get free gates with it. No, I'm just saying.
The
experience.
A lot of people are reading different things into it, but if I had to hazard a guess, I would say there's likely going to be different versions of the Miss Pac-Man cabinet exclusive to different retailers that will have slightly different game lineups. So if you don't like what you're seeing now, which has happened before, there's already historical precedent. Black Friday deals, we've seen those happen, special cabinets. So if you don't like the Miss Pac-Man cabinet you're seeing right now, chances are patiently wait a little bit, and you'll have a different option available to you later on.
And Alex, I gotta read this comment to you because it's from Cammie in the YouTube chat room. She goes, "The thought of someone taking 3 friends with them into the bathroom. ... That's for you, my friend."
I didn't quite think that went through, but that's the only place I can fit it.
I keep telling my wife,
my joystick in the bathroom. Come on, my joystick's right here.
It brings a whole nother meaning to taking one to the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was a family-friendly show there, Glenn.
I keep telling my wife, I can move the couches around the room. I'll just set them in the center of the room. That leads the whole other wall that I could put 4 or 5 cabinets and pinball machines on. And she just kind of looks at me with this glare. And I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. But I got to figure something out. because I'm determined. So tonight on the Retro Buzz, yes.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? What do you got?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to say I appreciate everything you guys are doing for the community. Like, I was a late bloomer. I started in I got my first cabinet in December this past year, and I already have 7. I mean, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Thank you guys for everything you're putting out there.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank
the
you.
next time the wife gives you a hard time, just say, "Look, I'm home. I'm not outside of the bar. I'm not outside, with the guys. I am home with you, my dear. And why don't you play a game of Miss Pac-Man when you're in the bathroom?"
That could go over to that could be actually bad. She might actually want him to go out.
No, surprisingly, my wife actually does like me. I don't know why. But, so.
Well, like, he's right. My wife says the same thing. She's like, at least you're home. You're playing with the kids.
Yeah.
The kids are down here playing games. Like, she don't mind it that I'm collecting consoles and arcades and even toys. I mean, thanks, Doug. It's just one of those things. Like, she's like, you could be wasting money on other stuff. So,
right.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Care.
Take care.
No one needs food.
Well, and that's the other thing. As long as she has
Food is
food
for
on the
punks.
as long as she has food on the table and a roof over her head and coffee. Coffee's the other thing. So,
Yeah.
You guys feel free to call in with your comments. Anybody hear anything from II Arcade? I thought, is that the 14th or the 15th that we're going to hear something from them?
Yeah, we should be hearing official words about Kickstarter and more official rollouts for games. And I don't remember the exact date, but it should be coming up very soon. I mean, this week is, faux E3 for all intents and purposes. So
yeah,
the getting's good.
So
wait, real quick. How did you guys feel about the IGN broadcast? I kind of thought it was kind of.
I didn't watch
boring,
it. I didn't actually watch it because I had meetings.
The best they can. Obviously, these people are, used to a little more studio environment and a little more preparation, and they're not used to trying to wing this from their, their bedroom or their home offices and things like that. So I give everybody,
they could have hired me.
Yeah. Some of these other companies I've definitely seen super underwhelming as far as their production capabilities. And I just blown away that companies of certain levels and stature can't put together a better, program or a live stream or.
This is why I have a job.
Yeah,
Mom, I want some coffee. Mom, coffee. No, we're streaming right now. We're live. No, but I want some cookies, Mom. Come on. Can you have some cookies?
PlayStation did their reveal yesterday.
Wait. Before you get into that, because I was actually going to say, now we're going to start a war. Okay, all you console gamers, and I'll let Doug continue here because he knew where I was going with it. So you guys out there, we want to hear from you. Call in the line. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to say, after watching PlayStation's, live, I don't know, call it a conference, more of a, just a presentation of the PlayStation 5 and the reveal and everything. It's like, number one, I was like, well, crap, they're never going to come to an E3 again, because looking at their numbers, they had 485,000 people watching live on YouTube, and not to mention how many other people were watching it through like the IGN stream that was essentially just piggybacking. And I was like, oh my goodness, like there's literally no financial reason for the to ever invest in an E3 presentation ever again. Like, I understand why Nintendo moved away and does these directs now, because it's so much more economical. You connect directly to your audience. But I mean, the presentation was really interesting. I love the reveal. A lot of cool games were shown. I'm excited about the PlayStation 5.
Well, so I have an exclusive for everybody here. Okay, you guys need to tweet this out, share this out. But I have the brand new Xbox in my hand, and I have the white version of it, which they did not show. You guys think I'm kidding? Look at this. The brand new Xbox, complete with all your ports and peripherals on the back of it. This is the white version of the new Xbox. You've seen it first here on the Retro Buzz. Hey, look it. That's what we do here. What do you think, Doug?
I mean, yeah, I've enjoyed a lot of the memes I've seen of the last 24 hours of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox console, and how everybody's, photoshopping and making them look like hilarious different objects. Like, to each their own. I'm not a fanboy for either one. I'll buy both. I like gaming in general, but yeah, the first thing when I saw that PlayStation 5, I was like, oh my God, this looks like, it needs to have the Eye of Mordor up top of it. And, the Xbox itself just looks like a trash can. I'm just like, They're interesting design choices, to say the least.
But I'd like to show where they got the idea.
Here.
You ready, Glenn? Where they got the idea from? You ready?
Oh,
this is an actual.
I believe it.
It's an old Apple router that
Well, the
I had.
Apple had the Cube. They had their Cube server, was it? Did they?
Yeah, the Apple the Cube. It was a
and they also had the trash can one too.
Yes.
Yeah, they had the Cube and then they had the trash bin.
But I still think I thought the PS5.
Looks like a Linksys router.
It does look like a router, but it's really stealthy. But how do you think people are going to feel? And I know, Doug, you said the same thing. What we've all been kind of saying about physical media. Now they have one that's with physical media, one without. Yeah. Do you think that's going to sell?
I mean, unfortunately, it will. But as soon as I saw that, my blood just started boiling. I was like, "Oh my God, quit exacerbating the quickness of physical media's death." Like, I know it's going to eventually happen. We're going to have to move to digital content only, but I do not want to see it. I will drag my feet as long as possible. So the fact that I saw them coming out with the two options, I was like, crap, this is going to speed up the process. I had an argument today with a buddy over text message because he's that guy that buys all the digital content and he doesn't go to the store. He's just like, why would I ever want to do that? I'm like, because I like to have
for
the physical
movies.
game.
For movies and music, I do digital. I don't buy CDs anymore. I don't buy Blu-rays and DVDs. It's just, I have kids, okay? So I don't want their grummy hands all over my discs, and they're going to ruin them faster. But for video games, I can at least make copies of them, and the kids can play the copies, and they don't ruin my originals. So PlayStation 6 and the next version of Xbox, no physical media.
I mean, more than likely. I mean, that's just the way everything's going.
Glenn, besides it looking like a router, are you probably not, your son hasn't hit you up to say, Dad, I want a PlayStation 5 and I want the new Xbox?
Well, first of all, everyone in the world knows my stance on not having physical media, so I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But the newest systems I have is a Xbox 360 that I've got just Halo and Gears on, nothing else. Nothing newer than that. And I have no intention of actually buying any of these new machines. First of all, I'm an old man.
Until they're retro?
They get a little too complicated for me.
He'll buy them in 20 years. He'll buy them in 20 years when they're retro.
Hey, you buy a PlayStation 5 in 20 years, no physical media. What are you going to do with it? You could just sit on it. It's worthless. What are you going to do with it? It's not my thing. And I always think that even with digital downloads, you should have the option of even having a memory card. So like with the Wii U, not the Wii U, I'm sorry, the Wii. The Switch.
Oh, the Switch.
Well, the Switch. They have tiny little memory cards. At least to have that option, putting games on that. Completely digital downloads to me is all for the corporation to make that much more profit because they don't need to make the physical media, sell it, put it on shelves, stuff like that. So actually, let them put GameStop out of business might not be too bad.
Well, wait.
But
let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second with what you just said about physical media. And I've got the perfect case to back that up. I just bought Guitar Hero Live for Xbox 360. Okay? It comes with, I think, 22 songs. But the purpose of Live was that you got on this server and you could play thousands of songs.
How's that working
for you? Now?
What?
Can you now?
I was going to say, Glenn, what happened to it?
Shut the server down.
They shut the server down, and I cannot utilize any of those features in Guitar Hero Live. I can't even click into it. It will not let me do anything. So what Glenn's saying, I'm nervous about, because if that happens and you're buying these digital games, your console's basically just a paperweight. What are you going to do with it?
And if you think about this, let's look at like the Wii U and the Wii, right? Or the Xbox. A lot of the games, when they load, they have to go to the server and download a patch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if the hard drive goes in your Xbox or your PlayStation? You got to put a new drive in. It's got to re-download those patches. Well, guess what? 10, 15 years from now, those servers don't have it anymore. Your game's not going to run. It's trying to load a patch that doesn't exist anymore because the server's been shut down. That's my problem with this type of stuff.
It's depressing. It really is. I mean, and I saw some rumors for this that it is going to be about $600 for this thing. Is there any truth to that, Doug, or am I reading the wrong places?
I mean, I think people are guessing just because of the specs and everything. My opinion, I think they're going to try to keep that $499 price point, because once you cross that $500 threshold, it becomes this whole another level of consumer marketing, and it just like you always want to keep that $499 and under price point, because that's essentially the bar for 75% of most consumers. Is anything below that is something they can finagle, do payment plans, whatever. Once you cross that $500 threshold, it becomes a premium product, and people don't want to touch it. Buyers for retailers, they're like, we'll order 2 as opposed to 20 if it would have been priced at $499. So it makes it much harder to market, much harder to sell.
But going off of what Glenn said, though, can you justify $600 just to get this?
Can I?
Before you even answer that, what's going to happen is it's happened already before with the previous generation. Say PlayStation comes out at 6, Xbox will take a loss at 5.
Yep.
Just to get it out there, they'll take a loss. So it's stupid to go that high for a number of reasons, and Doug hit most of them. But it'll just start a price war.
Oh wait, so Nostalgia posted in here, $449 for digital, $499 for physical. I hate to say that, but $500 is easier to swallow than that $600. Because once you cross that $500, it's like
you got a big mouth.
You're creeping to $1,000. You know what I mean? Like
around and boom, it's $1,000.
Yeah, at least the $500 price point is just slightly easier to swallow, just slightly.
Well, Doug, let me ask you this: when the PlayStation 3, didn't it launch at like a $500 price point? And how did that go for them?
It was stupid expensive, because that was what, 12 years ago. I'm trying to remember how far back it was, but it had a little bit of a excuse for having that stupid price point, because at the time, it was touting Blu-ray technology, and it was, hey, not only is it a game console, it's a Blu-ray player, and Blu-ray players standalones were also around that $500-$600 price point at the time. So it was like, hey, we could get by with this stupid high price because it's a multi-function machine that plays movies and plays games. So that was kind of their excuse. Granted, they were again taking a loss at PlayStation 3 as well, because they were hoping to win the format war, which eventually they did, and make up some back-end revenue with their software sales.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat room here, I'm looking, everybody's like, yeah, physical all the way. But you think about it, $500 is what you're paying right now for an arcade one-up with the lighted marquee and the riser. So everybody, $500 is easier to swallow. You start saying $600, and everybody's like, because until you get a game, do you pay tax?
That's another thing. Yeah, tax alone, depending on your state.
Second controller, these controllers are gonna be like $70. You know that. So you're still looking at close to $800-$900 just for one game and 2 controllers. If you have kids, Merry Christmas. That's all you're getting this year and next year and the year after that and the year after that. Man.
I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, it's a lot of high technology they're putting in there when you compare it to, say, like even the At-Games pinball machine, at $599, what it's going to be. So it is a lot of technology in there, but the companies generally lose money knowing on the console they'll make it up on the software. So I think that's still a very high price to pay for a gaming console myself, but people will still buy it. But I definitely would only get it with physical media. But now the question comes this. Even if you buy the physical media one, you're going to spend $50 more for that? Or if they don't release a certain game, you can only get it on digital, then you don't have a choice. Unless they're going to guarantee one of each, you can get digital or hard copy. They may just say eventually, this is the new Halo, but you can only get it on digital. So you're spending extra money for the physical, tough tooties. You ain't going to get it anyway. There's no guarantee.
True.
But this is where, and again, okay.
And if Kathleen Kennedy had her way, that's how they would do it.
This is what's leading to the new generation of Xbox Live and PlayStation Live. What's going to happen is you're going to pay $30 or $40 a month. You're going to play online, and you're going to have access to any game that your hard drive can hold, and that's what you're going to pay monthly. That's the next step in all this. It's going to be subscription-based, just like everything else that you do with music. It's coming, folks, and if you think it's not, you're sadly mistaken, because it is coming. And Glenn's 100% right.
It's a sad thing It's a sad thing because no matter what, these things will not be available forever that way. And you may want to show your kids, oh, here's Halo 16 or whatever it is, and you want to show it to them, and you can't do it. That to me, it's a disservice to the gamers out there, because when you play really good, like I love Halo and Gears of War, fantastic games. I can go back, I can still play them, that it's fine. But later on down the road, eventually it's going to be all digital, and there will come a time the server's just going to be off, and it's going to be tough tooties. It's just too bad. And that's a disservice to the community, because that game is art. When these guys work on these programs, it is a game, but it's also an art form. It's like a movie. It should be always available to see at some point in time. And I really feel bad for future generations that won't be the case.
We got a comment in the YouTube chat from Meatball Saucy. It says, with developers relying on day one patches so they don't have to finish their games, as Glenn pointed out, already physical media is dead. And that's one thing I can tell too. There's been several games I bought, and you put it in and it's like, boom, 40-minute download.
Doug, let's go back to PlayStation 4 launch. I don't know about you, but I did the midnight launch. I stood in line for it after I pre-ordered it. I got it home. I took the next day off of work, and I sat there, and guess what?
Downloaded.
For 4 hours, I couldn't do anything. I went to bed.
I was like, I'll make my sandwich. And then I was like, oh, I've already had my sandwich. I still have 3 hours to download. I'm like, well, this is an awesome experience.
I couldn't do nothing until the next day, and I just slept in because I was up for 3, 4 in the morning, and the servers were down. What are you gonna do?
All these releases, servers will crash that first week.
Yep.
Everyone's gonna bring them home and crash the server, which just blows my mind, because I'm like, you guys know exactly how many consoles are out in the wild. You should, expect how much bandwidth is going to be eaten up in those first 72 hours of operation. Like, just go in there and increase your bandwidth. But that's not how they operate. They just say, oh, sorry, that new toy you bought is $600-700 after taxes. It's just going to have to sit there for the next 48 hours until we get this up and running.
And then in addition to that, these online things, hackers. Look at Nintendo.
Yeah.
They got hacked. They said it was like 150,000. It's more like 400,000.
300,000.
So again, that stuff, they're protecting you that way. They don't even tell you all the data that they get.
Yep.
They're saying it's just passwords or this. You may have credit cards on there or not. I'm just not a fan of that stuff, because there's not that it's easy. I mean, I couldn't hack into these systems. If it was an old TI computer, yes, but not the new ones. But the fact is, people can do that, and I don't know. I mean, I know that people game online. I get it. That's the thing. It's not going to go anywhere. But it's just more of a hassle to me than it's worth. Like Doug was just saying, or you were saying, 4 downloads, you come home to play, and you got to wait 4 friggin' hours before you can start playing anything? That's ridiculous.
After spending $400 on it, And here's the thing that really caught me was, and again, these are some of the articles that I read, was that there's not really going to be any exclusive games for the Xbox or the PS4 or PS5 when it launches, that you'll still be able to get those same games on the Xbox One and also on the PS4. So what is, besides it being new and shiny, what is the compelling reason to go to the new system right away? This is what I'm trying to process, right? The graphics aren't that much difference. I mean, they are to an extent, but you know what I'm saying? Like the PS4,
you got to have everything else optimized to accompany it. Like,
right,
you can get a PS5, but if you're still looking at a 720, P 32-inch Vizio that you bought 10 years ago from Walmart playing your games, you're not going to notice any difference. Like, you've got to have, you want to play some 8K games? Well, by God, you've got to have an 8K monitor. You want to have a full 7.1 Dolby Atmos surround sound? Well, you better have a surround sound system that is able to decode that information. So, it's not just the console that you got to invest in. Like, every time technology advances to another level, you've got to upgrade everything around you.
That's what I was going to say here. The only 4K TV that I have in my house is the one right behind me that displays the show graphics as my background. That's the only, and it's only because I got a 65-inch, I think it's 65-inch for $300, and it's 4K. I didn't even care what brand it was, because all I wanted to do was display for in the studio, right? And it happened, I think it's LG or it's Vizio, I'm not sure. I'll have to
Well,
look at
I got 8 of these 720p's, so that's my 4K.
it. Webcam or?
Yeah, no, that's only 320.
Oh, well, I can't help you there. But you guys see, you see what I'm saying. Like I agree with what Doug's saying too, is because you know, if you don't have a 4K TV, the Xbox, even now, the Xbox One X, I think it is that what it's called, the One X? That's 4K. I just have the basic Xbox One, whatever the white one. We got it because it was the Fortnite bundle. My son wanted it. PlayStation 4, I don't even have the Pro because I don't have a 4K TV, and I don't feel like I've got enough TVs in my house. I don't feel like upgrading them yet. Just with the studio alone, I know people are going to cringe here when I say this, but I've got about 15 TVs that I use within the studio here. And then going outside the studio, I probably have, each of my kids have one in their room. We got the living room. I even, because I had an extra studio one, I put one in the bathroom down here. Yes, I have the ultimate man cave bathroom. There is a 32-inch TV in my bathroom.
Because you don't want to miss it.
That's right. So, especially at Thanksgiving time, I have it streaming the football games almost in every room. So, but my point is, I would have to upgrade every single one of those TVs, even though I only paid like $100 or $200 at Walmart for them, and you know they're pretty much throwaways. But still, it's I got to do it right. So,
such is the nature of the beast. But yeah, like you said, there's not a whole lot of like, other than you want to be the first person on the block with the newest and shiniest thing to really like jump to this next level. There's no, first party exclusives.
Right.
Major
no killer
titles.
app. There's no killer app.
Yeah, there's not that one thing that says I have to have this, or at least not yet.
Right. So I don't think I'm going to pre-order it. I don't. I think I'm going to wait and see. It's already going to be a mad dash. It's going to be hard to get because of everything that's happening in the pandemic, just like Switches. You can't get them. In fact, I'm trying to buy one of them because my son has one, but I want one for down here. I'm just not going to pay scalper price. I'll pay $300 for it, and that's it. I'm just, I'm not going to do that. So I don't know, guys. I think we've kind of ranted on and on enough here. I think it's, what do you say? It's time to wrap this up. I know everybody. I don't think there was anything else, right? I think we covered everything. Xbox, PS4, Arcade One Up. We covered.
Mm-hmm. We don't really know the new details of IR Arcade, so
no, we'll have to kind of cover that
later on.
But we kind of, I know Glenn was asking about getting online earlier this week, and with my son's baseball schedule, it's been difficult for me. So
thanks, COVID, for ending early. Thanks, COVID, for ending early. Appreciate it, COVID. Thank you. Goodness, couldn't have waited another week. Couldn't have waited one more week, so he couldn't have the baseball game. Thank you.
No, he's doing really good. I've been out working with him on times that I'm not working down here. And you guys know that we're working on the new show, Legends Center. So that's going to be coming up. So you guys will enjoy that for those of you at Games fans. And then once the pinball's released, we can talk about some of that stuff. But hopefully in the next week or two, maybe we'll get pictures or we'll get something tangible to look at.
Something.
Pinball. So PK, if you're watching, these guys want to see it.
Show us something, baby.
Show us something. So we're gonna do our normal sign off, I think, with this because I'm recording this, and you guys that called in, I hope you don't mind. You're gonna be on the recording. I think we're gonna put this up just YouTube only. This is gonna be a special episode with the interview.
29.5.
Yeah. So we'll have it up. Double the work for me tonight. So we'll get it out to you guys. But
Steven.
Yeah, guys. Mr. Doug Smith.
As always, pleasure, gentlemen.
Check him out. Cool Toy. And then also, go ahead. I know you're dying to do it.
Thanks for coming to the show. We appreciate the watch. Join us next week. Oh, baby, baby.
I'm not even, you know what? I'm not even going to follow that up. Glenn,
how can you?
Glenn, just take us home with that.
All right, hold on.
Thanks for watching the Tech Buzz. We appreciate the show that you are watching with us. Oh, baby, baby.
Want to qualify to win a Legends Gamer or Legends Ultimate? Participate in the Summer League event, and you may be able to do just that. Current Legends Ultimate owners can participate in the 10-week Summer League event starting June 5th, 2020 and ending August 9th, 2020. During that time, there'll be a series of weekend leaderboard events for select games each week. This is a battle to the end. Practice up, make your scores count, and top the charts once and for all, and have a beauty of a prize to show for your hard work. Have fun on the leaderboards, and good luck.